So, No Time to Die is finally out. I have this thing about not going to watch a new film on the opening night because I always expect it to be just too busy. But I'll be going hopefully on Wednesday with my friend. Um, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, what a hiatus. This was originally scheduled for release, I believe, in late 2019. It's now late 2021. That's, very long hiatus, a very long wait, and I'm looking forward to it. Um, so that's kind of the disclaimer to this that I haven't seen the new film, so I obviously cannot comment on the new film. I might do a review, time permitted, after that on what I think of No Time to Die. Um, would I call myself a Bond fan? To an extent, yes. I mean, I've seen all the films several times. I haven't read any of the books, but I have all the films, including Never Say Never Again, which is a non-EOM production. So I know the series pretty well. I think it's a national cultural institution for the United Kingdom, and I'm kind of proud of that. The fact that its iconic screen character is British and quintessentially British. I like the fact that he has a certain British suaveness. I'm talking about Bond, the character here. Yeah, he's tough. He's not this bumbling Englishman character. He's a tough guy. Um, he's morally ambiguous. At least the more recent renditions of him have been. He's a complex character, but I like that. I like that aspect of the Bond series. Um, there's been a lot of interviews with Daniel Craig and his co-stars, with this being his last outing as Bond. Craig, I believe, is 51, 52 now. When Roger Moore done his last film in 1985, the year I was born, A View to a Kill, I believe he was 56, and unfortunately it showed. Um, Probably the ideal age for a Bond actor is somewhere between mid 30s and early 50s, simply in terms of the physical demands that the role has. Um, I think that's probably the right age bracket. Um, there's a few things I want to cover in this video. I'm going to put them into one video because I don't know if we'll be making them separately, so bear with me. In terms of who the new Bond will be, well, it's interesting that Barbara Broccoli, who of course is one of the main figures in the Broccoli family, which will forever be associated with the Bond franchise. She has said that Bond will not be a woman. Now, this is interesting because so long as the series is in the hands of the Broccolis, that will be the direction, and I think that's good. Um, I know that Bond actors like Brosnan and Craig have been asked about this, and you could tell they're trying to be diplomatic. But here's the reality. James Bond can never be a woman. James Bond can never be a woman, right? It's in the name. Firstly, you'd have to change Bond's name. If you're going for the letters, it would be Jill or Jane or Judy Bond. If she's going to be a female equivalent, or if we're going to reimagine Bond as a woman, then what sort of quirks is she going to have? Bond's a womanizer, so is she going to be promiscuous? Is she going to flirt with every handsome man in sight? Is she going to be a hard drinker? Is she going to be a morally ambiguous character? Anyway, it doesn't really matter because it isn't going to happen. But there are people out there who still think it should, and you know, I wouldn't call myself a fanboy. I wouldn't be so hardcore. Like, for example, I couldn't tell you the individual gadgets of each film. The villains, yes. Um, the basic plots, yes, and a lot of other aspects. But I'm not such a hardcore fan that I get into the tiny little nuances of all the details of the stories. But the point about Bond is it's escapism, right? It's about a British eccentric spy. Roger Moore once amusingly said he's not a very good spy because everyone knows who he is, which is a good point. But it's escapism, right? It's beautiful women, it's fast cars, it's espionage, it's it's escapism. That's what it is. Now, on this issue about Bond being a woman, there's a few reasons why that can't happen. Firstly, the character was not written as a woman, so it would be betraying and disrespecting the source. Ian Fleming did not write Bond as a woman. Specifically, he was a man who was from Scotland. So actually, he was a Scot, right? If we want to get technical about it. But I think, a Commonwealth actor, British, Canadian, Aussie, New Zealander could pull it off. No disrespect to our American cousins, but I'm not sure an American could pull it off unless they're as good an actor as Renee Zellweger is an actress. She was great as Bridget Jones. Um, so I think they'd have to come from a Commonwealth country or Ireland. I mean, I think Brosnan was a great Bond. Um, just a quick word on Brosnan actually versus Craig. I think Brosnan's underrated. I think that he's kind of like, because Craig's so good, Brosnan has kind of almost been forgotten. But for me, Pierce Brosnan, firstly, he's the Bond that I grew up with. He was Bond when I started getting into the series. He has a suaveness, certainly good looks, charm, and he brought something totally unique to the role, I thought. Yet he was a tough guy as well. I like Pierce Brosnan as Bond. I like Craig as well, but I actually think Brosnan was smoother as the character was meant to be. Craig probably tougher, Um, Craig had that grittiness that Connery had, but Brosnan also had suaveness. Connery, of course, will always be the template because he was the first. Um, but I detract. Bond can't be a woman because the character wasn't written as a woman. But the premise is just lazy. I mean, as Craig has said, and as others have said, there can be great roles for women. I mean, I've nothing against the idea of a strong female lead in an espionage thriller, but that has been done. Look at Red Sparrow with Jennifer Lawrence. I thought that was a good movie. I thought it was a good thriller. I thought it was gritty. I thought it was. I thought she was very good at the role. I don't really know why people criticize Jennifer Lawrence as an actress. I think she is a good actress, and I thought that was a good film. So that shows it could be done. But if you're going to make Bond a woman, then imagine the argument that Lara Croft should be a man or Wonder Woman should be a man. It's just absurd. Um, I think it's lazy. I mean, Craig has said it was either Craig or Barbara Broccoli had said there should be uh, films about women, written by women, for women, all of that. Okay, so it's pitching to the feminist argument, but here's the thing I sort of that irritates me a little bit. People are talking as if only this latest film has modernized and given strong female roles. A lot of focus is being put on Lashana Lynch. I really don't know her as an actress. I've seen none of her other work, so I can't comment on her skills as an actress. But um, you know, uh, Leia Sadu has said this as well. Like, oh, now we are starting to get strong roles for women. Well, I would argue, having seen all the films several times over, that there have been strong female characters in Bond since at least the Dalton era. I think people sort of think, okay, you've got the Craig era and you've got the Connery era. They forget the whole swathe in between. So I concede that in a Connery era, there were things that were very politically incorrect and by today's standards would be, out of place. Even I think, I like the Connery films. He is the iconic Bond, but they are in the 60s, and there are definitely things like when, he slaps a woman on the behind and makes innuendo. And let's face it, the women in the Connery era, for the most part, apart from Pussy Galore, were eye candy. They were just, either ditzy or femme fatales. There wasn't much of a dimension to them. But I do believe this changed over time. I believe certainly starting in the Dalton era, but definitely throughout the Brosnan era. I mean, look at Judi Dench. She held her own against Pierce Brosnan. She even reprimanded him for his sexist dinosaur ways. I think it was in Tomorrow Never Dies. Look at the characters. Look at Halle Berry. She's a strong female character. Look at Miranda Frost, um, played by the excellent. Rosamund Pike. Look at Electra King. I mean, my goodness, Electra King in The World Is Not Enough. She is a multi-dimensional femme fatale. She's a strong female character. She's a villain or a quasi-villain, if you recall the film. But I don't know how people could just ignore all of that and imply that only now are there strong female characters. So I think that's just dishonest. I think Bond has always been evolving. And I will say this, just thinking of the actors, Roger Moore was not the best actor, right? But what he done was he knew that he couldn't be Sean Connery. He couldn't be convincing as a ruthless killer. But he brought comedy to it and he brought suaveness to it. Even by his own admission, he wasn't a great actor, but I think he had a certain English charm, and I quite liked some of the Moore films. I really like Given That Die, and I think that people can look at, for example, the Moore era disparagingly, but Moore helped Bond stay afloat. This series could have ended in the early 70s, and it didn't. Um, each actor brings something new, and each actor got dismissed in the beginning. So Pierce Brosnan was dismissed, Daniel Craig was dismissed, and now he's being some consider him the greatest Bond. So me personally, I'm going to be boring here. I wouldn't say anyone's the greatest Bond. Brosnan is the Bond I grew up with. I respect the fact that Connery was the template Bond, he was the original Bond. I like Moore's charm. And I like Craig as a Bond. I think he's a good actor, and I think there's a real depth to his Bond. I liked Dalton. I just wish, like a lot of people, he'd done more films. So I think he's slightly untested. But he carried himself in those two films. And as for Lazenby, unfortunately, he's probably the most forgettable Bond simply because he only done one film. But I don't think he was bad. I think it's just unfortunately circumstances. He didn't get on with his co-star, excuse me, Diana Rigg, and he was also told by his agent that in the 70s, film was going in a different direction, kung fu films. So one sort of thinks Lazenby got a little bit of a raw deal, possibly. Although some say his behaviour on set was a bit pompous, considering it was his first role in a Bond film. I don't know. Who knows what goes on behind the scenes? But there are, whoever fills Daniel Craig's shoes, there will be pressure. It's an iconic role. But the fact that these Craig films have done so well commercially um, indicates that this is a series that isn't going anywhere. I do think, though, it would be a big mistake if they feel they have to go down an ever more woke direction, right? Um, so this character, Lashana Lynch, plays. It'll be interesting to see what angle that is. I mean, I haven't seen the film, so I really can't comment on it. But if they're going to, if they're going to sort of say, well, she's Bond's equal his sidekick, then it's going to be like a buddy movie rather than Bond is he is the protagonist. So I hope they don't do that because otherwise it's just going to be like a buddy movie in the 70s, except a man and a woman. Nothing wrong with having another double O, but it would just be too obvious that that is the direction, almost to appease the fact, oh, well, we've asked another man as Bond, so we better placate critics by doing this. They have to respect their target audience, and the people who like the Bond films, from what I can see, don't want it to go in this direction um, of being ever more woke. It's just not necessary. I would argue the Bond films as they are now are contemporary enough. I mean, there are strong female characters um, who absolutely hold their own. So it's just, I really just don't think it's necessary to go in that direction. In terms of more angles, I would like to see more locations. I appreciate there's filming restrictions, but you can double up places. I'll be a little bit disappointed if in this new film they use the same locations that have always been used. For example, Italy, Turkey, those countries have been used in numerous Bond films. So I'll think, well, that's a little bit lazy. Like there are fascinating, interesting countries, parts of the world that have never been featured in a Bond film. And not many people think about this, but I think it's quite important because the whole point about Bond is escapism. So let's have some fascinating destinations in there. I mean, let's say Indonesia's never been featured in a Bond film. One or two African countries, but not many. Um, so I'd like to see a bit more variation in terms of the locations. Um, there's too many ski chase sequences. I can think of at least four Bond films that have that. So sometimes it gets a little bit formulaic. But I'm sure this new film will be impressive. I think all the Craig films have been great. But then again, I thought all the Brosnan films were great as well. Um, just for the record, I personally think the weakest Bond films were For Your Eyes Only and The Living Daylights. On the ground, lads. Well, For Your Eyes Only, I understand what they were doing. They wanted to get back down to earth from that ridiculous space fight in Moonraker. I understand that. But it was just forgettable. There was nothing about the plot that particularly stood out. It wasn't bad. There was nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong with the acting or anything like that. I just felt it was a bit forgettable. Um, the Living Daylights again, it was a bit better. I watched it more recently for the second or third time, and actually I'm a little bit more impressed because of what's happening in Afghanistan. And it's set in Afghanistan during the 80s. It has its moments, but I still think it doesn't come close to License to Kill. I think License to Kill is far better. But that's just my opinion, and that's the great thing about the Bond series. It all comes down to opinion. Everyone has their favourites. Um, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope this new film doesn't disappoint. I don't think it will. One thing I always look forward to is the infographics, the artwork. I think that's amazing. And that's just being progressive to getting better and better with each film. Um, my favorite Bond film, I'm not talking about my favorite Bond, but my favorite Bond film, Skyfall. Has to be Skyfall. Other Bond films that I like, this is not in any particular order. And I appreciate not everyone would agree. Um, let's see, Quantum of Solace, The World Is Not Enough, Die Another Day, Golden Eye, and Tomorrow Never Dies. I liked all the Brosnan films. License to Kill, Live and Let Die, thinking of the older films. You Only Live Twice. Now, Goldfinger was a good film, and it's kind of the prototype Bond film. I think it's tiny bit overrated, tiny bit. From Russia with Love, I like. But to be honest, there isn't a single Bond film I really dislike. They all have something, and I believe all the actors had something. Who's going to succeed Craig? I'll quickly round this off with this thought. Well, Tom Hardy would be an interesting choice. The problem is Tom Hardy is already pretty famous. He's an A-lister, and all the other actors were relatively unknown when they got the part. So I think it needs to be a relatively unknown actor, not totally obscure, but relatively unestablished. Otherwise, if you have Tom Hardy playing the role, people just think that's Tom Hardy. They don't think James Bond. It was a while that Clive Owen was discussed a few years ago, but I don't think he's interested in the role, and he's probably a bit too old now anyway. Um, Benedict Cumberbatch has been named. Michael Fassbender. I must admit, I'm not that familiar with Mr. Fassbender's work. I've seen some of it. I think he seems like a pretty good actor. I can see that. And there's a few other guys. Here's a really out there suggestion, um, and it's the actor who played King Arthur in the Merlin series. Um, and of course, I forget his name. Uh, James. I forget the guy's name. Anyway, he was the actor who played Arthur in the Merlin series. Now, I think he has a lot going there. He's a good-looking guy. I think he's a fine actor. I think he has a toughness. He's English. I think there's a lot of factors there that might make him an interesting dark horse uh, possibility for Bond. But whether he's interested in the role or not, I don't know. 37, so he's a good age for starting the role. I don't know. James. That's going to bug me what the guy's name is. James is in there somewhere. I don't know if it's his surname or his first name. Irritating. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Who was your favourite Bond actor? What was your favorite Bond film? What do you think about the direction of Bond? And yeah, any more thoughts that you might have. I believe this is a British institution, and long may it continue. It's a bit of escapism. It's probably, a lot more romanticized than the real world of espionage. I imagine MI6 operatives spend a lot more time on computers than, getting into car chases. But still, it's escapism. That's what it is. And, that's what cinema is all about. So long may it continue.